Hey, my lovely listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Cozy Cults and Crimes, where we explore the darkest corners of humanity, all from the safety of our cozy, warm blankets. I'm Bubbles, your host, your hoodie-clad true crime bestie, back with another chilling tale that will have you reaching for the nightlight. So grab your favourite blanket, a warm drink, and maybe even a furry friend for comfort. Because tonight we're diving into a story that will leave you breathless. Just a quick content warning, this episode delves into the darkest corners of human depravity, exploring themes of murder, betrayal, and the abuse of power. Listener discretion is advised. If you're feeling vulnerable or sensitive, please prioritise your well-being and consider skipping this episode. Now, trust. It's the foundation of the doctor-patient relationship, isn't it? We bare our souls to these healers, believing they have our best interests at heart. But what if that trust is shattered? What if the person you rely on for healing is the one who ends your life? Tonight, we're unravelling the chilling tale of Dr. Harold Shipman, the British GP, also known as Dr. Death. He was a master manipulator, a wolf in sheep's clothing, who used his position to become one of history's most prolific serial killers. The truth is often stranger than fiction, guys, and tonight's tale is a chilling reminder of that. Get ready to uncover the dark secrets hidden behind the white coat and a friendly smile. Also, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review Cozy Cults and Crimes so you never miss an episode. Alright, culty crew, let's rewind back to the very beginning, to the origins of a monster disguised as a healer. Harold Shipman, born in 1946 in the town of Nottingham, England, wasn't just your stereotypical villain. He was a seemingly ordinary bloke, the kind you'd pass on the street without a second glance. He was a bright student, a rugby player, and to all appearances, a normal lad. But beneath that facade of normalcy, a darkness simmered, waiting for the right moment to ignite. Shipman's childhood was marked by a complex relationship with his mother Vera, a dominant force in his young life. Vera, a woman of fierce determination and unwavering ambition, instilled in him a drive to succeed, a thirst for recognition, and perhaps a touch of arrogance that would later manifest into his God complex. However, Vera wasn't just a demanding mother. She herself harboured some pretty dark prejudices and a disturbing fascination with the Nazi regime, which some experts believe may have influenced Shipman's twisted psyche. When Shipman was only 17, his mother died from lung cancer. Witnessing her agonising decline and the temporary relief provided by morphine sparked a morbid fascination with death and the power of drugs in young Harold. He meticulously documented her morphine doses in a diary, an eerie foreshadowing of his twisted desire to control life and death. It was as if he saw in those morphine injections a power he desperately craved, a power to alleviate suffering, but also perhaps a power to end it. Now, driven by ambition and a desire to emulate his mother's strength, Shipman excelled academically and entered the medical school at Leeds. However, even in his early career, there were troubling signs that hinted at the darkness lurking just beneath the surface. He was lying about his qualifications, forging prescriptions, and displayed a disturbing interest in the macabre, even volunteering to work in the hospital mortuary. This is just so creepy in its own right. Now, these red flags sadly went unnoticed or merely dismissed as mere eccentricities by those around him. After graduating, Shipman's career took a dark turn as he developed an addiction to pethidine, a powerful painkiller. This wasn't just a personal struggle, however, it was a catalyst for his descent into darkness. The addiction fueled his growing ambition with control and his disregard for boundaries of ethical medical practice. He began to forge prescriptions for himself, a grave ethical violation that revealed a disturbing lack of a moral compass. It was as if the addiction had unlocked a Pandora's box within him, unleashing the darker impulses that had been simmering beneath the surface for a long time. This reckless behaviour didn't go unnoticed. In 1974, Shipman was caught forging prescriptions and forced to leave his position at the Pontefract General Infirmary. He was only fined a mere £600 and made to attend rehab, but the experience didn't deter him from his destructive path. Instead, it fueled his resentment and reinforced his belief that he was above the rules. A dangerous mindset that would have devastating consequences for countless innocent lives. Now, in 1977, Shipman resurfaced in Hyde, a seemingly peaceful town near Manchester. He joined the Donnybrook Medical Centre, not as a junior doctor under scrutiny, but as a general practitioner with his own practice. This new position gave him the autonomy and control that he craved, far removed from the prying eyes of colleagues and supervisors. It was here, in this unassuming town, that Shipman's dark fantasies would truly take flight. Shipman quickly integrated himself into the community, becoming a well-respected and beloved figure. He was known for his friendly demeanour, his willingness to make house calls at any hour, and his apparent concern for his patients' well-being. He was especially popular with the elderly women of Hyde, who saw him as a trustworthy and caring physician. But beneath this veneer of kindness lurked a sinister secret. Shipman's addiction to pethidine hadn't disappeared. It festered in the shadows, fueling his descent into darkness. This addiction, coupled with a growing fascination with death and an inflated ego that convinced him that he held power over life and death, set the stage for a reign of terror. Shipman began to see his patients not as people in need of care, but as pawns in his twisted game. His weapon of choice? Diamorphine, a potent opioid, also known as heroin. Shipman's chilling method was simple as it was sinister. He would often visit his elderly patients at home, many of whom were frail and lived alone. He would inject them with lethal doses of diamorphine under the guise of providing pain relief or medical treatment. These unsuspecting victims, who had placed their trust in him as their doctor, would slip into unconsciousness and die peacefully in their own homes. Shipman was meticulous in his methods. He often brought his own medical bag, ensuring he had everything in hand's reach he needed to carry out his sinister plan. He would then calmly fill out their death certificates, attributing their deaths to natural causes like old age or heart failure. He even went so far as to forge medical records to cover his tracks, making it seem like his victims had been in declining health. Imagine the betrayal those patients must have felt. They welcomed him into their homes, trusted him with their lives, and he repaid them back with cold-blooded murder. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? And the most chilling part of it all? He got away with it for years. These deaths were gradual at first, but they soon became more and more frequent. Yet no one suspected a thing. The community was blinded by their trust in Dr. Death, and the system was too flawed to catch him. Shipman even had a nickname in the community, Fred the Shred, due to his tendency to shred documents in his office. I can't even imagine the pain and suffering and betrayal he inflicted on these families. It's just so sad. But thankfully, whatever is done in the dark does come to light. As the bodies piled up, whispers of suspicion began to circulate, and the cracks in Shipman's carefully constructed facade started to show. Alright, culty crew, get ready to get pissed off, and I try really hard not to swear in this podcast, but how he got away with this for so long is sickening and makes every part of my fucking blood boil. Because, you see, this is where the story takes an even darker turn. You see, Shipman didn't operate in a vacuum. As early as 1984, so that's 10 years after he was let go from his job at the Pontefract General Infirmary, alarm bells were ringing loud enough to wake the dead, but those in charge were hitting the snooze button. Local undertakers noticed a disturbing trend. An unusually high number of Shipman's patients were dying at home, often found fully dressed as if they were expecting someone. And it wasn't just them. Shipman's colleagues at the Donnybrook Medical Centre were also noticing red flags. The high death rate, suspicious circumstances, and discrepancies in medical records that would make your head spin. Some even confronted Shipman, but he was slippery as an eel, deflecting their concerns with his charm and seemingly plausible explanations. In 1994, two doctors, Dr. Suzanne Booth and Dr. Peter Clark, even conducted their own mini investigation, comparing Shipman's mortality rates to other practices in the area. They found that his rates were significantly higher, but their concerns about that were as welcome as a fart in a spacesuit. They reported their findings to the South Manchester's coroner's office, but the coroner, well, let's just say he wasn't exactly Sherlock Holmes. He failed to investigate further, leaving Shipman free to continue his reign of terror. But the most glaring missed opportunity came in 1998, and it would be the one to finally unravel Shipman's web of deceit. Enter Angela Woodruff, a lawyer with a backbone of steel and the daughter of one of Shipman's unsuspecting victims, Kathleen Grundy. When her mother died abruptly, Angela's alarm bells went off louder than a klaxon. She knew her mother had been healthy, full of life and vigour, and Shipman's flimsy excuse of old age just did not hold water with her. It was as believable as a unicorn riding a skateboard. Angela, with her legal mind firing on all cylinders, decided to dig into her mother's affairs like a dog with a bone. And what she unearthed was far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Shipman, that two-faced snake, had forged her mother's will, leaving everything to him. Talk about adding a layer of ghoulish greed to an already horrifying crime. This discovery set off alarm bells louder than a fire drill in a library, and Angela wasn't about to let it fade into the background noise. She stormed into the police station, armed with her suspicions and a lawyer's determination. But initially, they turned a deaf ear, blinded by Shipman's seemingly impeccable reputation. After all, he was the good doctor, the pillar of the community. But Angela was relentless, refusing to let her mother's death be just another statistic, another cold case collecting dust on a shelf. Her persistence paid off. A new investigation was launched, led by Detective Superintendent Bernard Postles, a man who was not afraid to rattle a few cages and ruffle a few feathers. This time, they took Angela's concerns seriously, finally recognising the chilling truth she had been shouting from the rooftops. They exhumed Kathleen Grundy's body, and lo and behold, they found a lethal dose of diamorphine, the powerful painkiller coursing through her veins. The game was up. They finally had the smoking gun, the irrefutable evidence they needed to bring Shipman to justice. It was like finding a bloody knife in a nun's handbag. Impossible to ignore. In September of 1998, the hammer fell. Shipman was arrested and slapped with 15 counts of murder and 1 count of forgery. This news sent shockwaves through the town and surrounds of Hyde, shattering the idyllic image of their trusted doctor. The man they had welcomed into their homes, their lives, was a wolf in sheep's clothing, a serial killer hiding in plain sight. It was like finding out your friendly neighbour was secretly a cannibal. Absolutely horrifying. With the smoking gun in hand, the police finally took off their blinders. They expanded their investigation, exhuming more bodies and meticulously combing through medical records like a detective in a crime novel. What they uncovered was a horror story that would forever haunt the town of Hyde. Shipman had been murdering his patients not for weeks or months, but for years. And the number of victims was staggering, enough to fill a small cemetery. But how could this seemingly ordinary GP become such a prolific killer? To understand that, we need to delve into the twisted mind of Harold Shipman. A mind as dark and labyrinthian as the catacombs beneath Paris. Alright, crew. Now that we've uncovered the chilling extent of Shipman's crimes, it's time to delve into the dark recesses of his mind. What could drive a seemingly ordinary GP to become a prolific serial killer? What demons lurked beneath the surface of his respectable facade? Now look, I am no shrink, but I have done my research, and I'm here to share with you what experts believe might have been going on in Harold Shipman's head. But fair warning, this is where things get kind of creepy, if it isn't already. Shipman was a master manipulator. He was a chameleon who could blend seamlessly. Sorry, I am so sorry. Sometimes I can say words and other times I just struggle. Anyway, he was a chameleon who could blend seamlessly into any social setting. He was charming, charismatic, and seemingly trustworthy. But, as we know now, beneath that veneer of normalcy, there was a darkness, a twisted desire for power and control. Now, some experts believe that Shipman was driven by a God complex, a delusional belief that he was the arbiter of life and death. The act of killing gave him a sense of omnipotence, a feeling of control that he could not find anywhere else. This God complex may have stemmed from his early childhood experiences, particularly his relationship with his mother. Vera was a dominant figure in young Harold's life, and her death from cancer when he was a teenager had a profound impact on him. Experts believe that witnessing her suffering and the power of morphine to alleviate it may have planted the seeds of his obsession with control over life and death. Others point to narcissism as a key factor in Shipman's psychology. He was arrogant, self-centered, and lacked empathy for others. He didn't see his patients as human beings, but as pawns in his deadly game. Their lives were meaningless to him. All that mattered was his own twisted satisfaction. This narcissism, fueled by a deep-seated insecurity and a thirst for validation, may have been the driving force behind his murderous rampage. His addiction to pethidine, the powerful painkiller used in childbirth, could have further exacerbated his narcissistic tendencies and his disregard for human life. It's hard for me to wrap my head around how someone could be so cold and calculating, so devoid of empathy. But that's the chilling reality of serial killers like Shipman. They're not like you or me. They see the world through a distorted lens, and their actions are driven by dark impulses that most of us can't even fathom. It's a reminder that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places, even in those we trust the most. Alright, crew. You know how I said, his reign of terror was going to get you mad? Yeah, that's nothing compared to the systematic failings and the lack of oversight this guy had. This next bit is going to make your blood boil hotter than a kettle on a stovetop. See, this case isn't just about Shipman being a cunning and manipulative bastard. It's about a whole damn system that failed to protect the victims. A system so riddled with cracks and blind spots, it's a wonder it didn't collapse under its own weight. Let's start with the General Medical Council, or the GMC. These are the supposed guardians of the medical profession in the UK. You'd think they'd be all over this, something like this, like a rash, right? Wrong. Back in 1976, they already had Shipman in their crosshairs when he was convicted for forging the scripts for pethidine. Did they yank away his license? Did they monitor him at all? No. They slapped him on the wrist with a measly $600 fine and a little bit of rehab, and then turned a blind eye as he went back to his deadly practice. It's like giving a toddler a chainsaw and then telling them, off you go have fun. And the negligence doesn't stop with them. Yes, the GMC failed to investigate the alarming high death rate among Shipman's patients, despite his colleagues waving red flags like they were at a bullfight. The GMC didn't even bother to glance at his medical records, which were a tangled mess of lies and inconsistencies. It's a bloody disgrace, a blatant disregard for patient safety that just makes me want to scream from the rooftops. They had multiple opportunities to intervene, to question, to investigate, but they chose to look the other way. It's like they were wearing blindfolds and earplugs, completely oblivious to the carnage unfolding right under their noses. And then there's the Home Office, the bureaucratic behemoth responsible for overseeing death registrations in the UK. They should have spotted the pattern of suspicious deaths, especially since Shipman often was the one signing the death certificates. But did they connect the dots? Did they even raise an eyebrow? Not a bloody chance. There was a colossal failure of communication between different agencies, each assuming someone else was watching the store. It's like a game of hot potato, but lives are at stake. No one wanted to take responsibility, to ask the tough questions, and to challenge the status quo. And as a result of that, Shipman was free to continue his reign of terror, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. And the saddest bit of it to me is the Shipman case isn't just a one-off. It's an echo of some other catastrophic failures, like the recent case of Nurse Lucy Letby, the neonatal nurse who murdered 7 babies right under the noses of her colleagues. These cases expose a disturbing pattern, a blind faith in authority figures, a reluctance to challenge the status quo, and a system that prioritizes reputation over the safety and well-being of the vulnerable. It's a systemic rot that runs deep, a culture of complacency and denial that allows evil to flourish. Crew, the systematic failings that we've just discussed are a gut punch, a stark reminder that even the most trusted institutions can fail us. But the story doesn't end there. In the wake of Shipman's arrest and the unmasking of his horrific crimes, a reckoning was demanded. A public inquiry was launched, one that would delve into the darkest corners of this case, expose the rot at the heart of the system, and leave an indelible mark on the history of British medicine. Buckle up, because we're about to witness the unravelling of a conspiracy of silence and the desperate search for truth and justice. Alright, listeners, as if this story wasn't already the stuff of nightmares, the aftermath of Shipman's arrest was like ripping open a festering wound, revealing the true depths of his depravity and the systematic failings that had paved the way for his reign of terror. The sheer scale and audacity of his crimes demanded a reckoning. A thorough investigation into how such a monstrous scheme could have gone unnoticed for so long. In the wake of Shipman's arrest in 1998, a massive public inquiry was launched in January of 2001. It was a Herculean task led by Dame Janet Smith, a High Court judge with a reputation for unwavering tenacity. Her mission? To meticulously dissect not only the extent of Shipman's murderous spree, but also the labyrinthian network of failures that allowed him to operate under the radar for decades. The inquiry, officially dubbed the Shipman Inquiry, was one for the history books, one of the most extensive and exhaustive in UK history. It was a grueling odyssey, a deep dive into the heart of darkness. Every single death certified by Shipman was scrutinised, every medical record combed through, every witness painstakingly interviewed. It was a painstaking process, but the findings were nothing short of apocalyptic. The inquiry concluded that Shipman had extinguished the lives of at least 218 of his patients, making him the most prolific serial killer in recorded history. It was a devastating blow to the families of the victims, who had already been grappling with the unimaginable grief of losing their loved ones. And as if it wasn't horrifying enough, the inquiry estimated that the true number of victims could actually be as high as 250. 250. It's a chilling reminder that the full extent of Shipman's evil may never be known. The vast majority of Shipman's victims were elderly women, often widowed and living alone. They were the most vulnerable members of society, trusting souls who placed their faith in their doctor, the very person who was supposed to heal and protect them. Shipman ruthlessly exploited this trust, preying on them like a wolf in sheep's clothing, extinguishing their lives with calculated precision. But the inquiry didn't stop at tallying the dead. It also shone a harsh light on the systematic failings that had allowed Shipman to operate with impunity. It revealed a shocking lack of communication and coordination between different agencies, a bureaucratic maze where warning signs were ignored, Red flags were dismissed and precious lives were lost in the cracks. In the aftermath of this horrifying revelation, the inquiry made a series of recommendations aimed at plugging the holes in the system, from tightening death certification procedures to improving communication between agencies, implementing stricter controls on controlled drugs. While some of these recommendations have been implemented, the question lingers like a ghost. Have they been enough? Have we truly learned from the mistakes of the past? The chilling echoes of the Shipman case can be heard in the more recent tragedies, like I said, the Lucy Letby case. And these cases force us to confront the uncomfortable truth that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places, even within the hallowed halls of medicine. Alright guys, now comes the part of the story that truly breaks my heart. Behind the cold hard facts and figures, behind the shocking headlines and the courtroom drama, there were 218 people, real people. Mothers, fathers, grandparents, siblings, friends, all victims of Shipman's horrific crimes. Imagine this. You're an elderly woman living alone in Hyde. You've lived a full life, raised a family, worked hard, and now you're enjoying your golden years. You trust your doctor, Harold Shipman. He's a friendly face, a familiar presence in your life. He's always happy to make house calls and listen to your concerns. He always seems to know just what to say to make you feel better. But one day, he comes to your home with a syringe filled with diamorphine. He tells you it's just a routine injection, something to ease your pain. You trust him. He's your doctor. What else are you going to do? So you let him do it. But instead of relief, you feel a sudden wave of drowsiness. And then, nothing. Your life is over, stolen from you by the very person you trusted to care for you. This is the reality that 218 families in Hyde had to face. Their loved ones were taken from them in the most horrific way imaginable, by a man they believed was their friend, their confidant, their healer. The pain and grief they experienced are just imaginable. Many families were left in utter shock and disbelief, struggling to come to terms with the sudden and unexplained loss of their loved ones. Some even blamed themselves, wondering if they could have done something to prevent the tragedy from happening. Each victim has a name, a story, and a life that mattered. There was Lizzie Adams, a 77-year-old widow who loved gardening and spending time with her grandchildren. She was found dead in her home, fully clothed and sitting upright in her chair, just hours after Shipman had visited her. There was Jean Lilly, a 58-year-old mother of 3, who was always there for her family and her friends. She was discovered lifeless on her sofa, a syringe still laying nearby. And then there was Kathleen Grundy, whose death ultimately led to Shipman's downfall. Her daughter, Angela, was the lawyer who became suspicious of the circumstances surrounding her mother's death, and her persistence led to the investigation that exposed Shipman's crimes. These were real people, not just statistics. It's important to remember that each of Shipman's victims was a unique individual with their own hopes, dreams, and loved ones. Their lives were cut short, their families devastated, and their trust betrayed in the most unimaginable way. We owe it to them to remember their names, tell their stories, and honour their memory. The Shipman inquiry meticulously documented the lives of each victim, ensuring that their stories were never forgotten. The families of the Shipman victims faced a long and arduous journey towards justice. They had to endure exhumations, autopsies, and the painful process of reliving their grief in the public eye. Many families felt let down by the system, as they had raised concerns about Shipman's behaviour but were not taken seriously. They felt a deep sense of betrayal and anger towards the man they had once trusted implicitly. But amidst the darkness, there was also a glimmer of hope. The families of Shipman's victims, fueled by grief and a thirst for justice, refused to let their loved ones be forgotten. They formed support groups, shared their stories, and campaigned for changes in the healthcare system. Their tireless advocacy and determination to uncover the truth led to the reopening of the investigation and the eventual exposure of Shipman's crimes. This case is a stark reminder of the devastating impact that one person's actions can have on countless lives. It's a story of unimaginable loss, betrayal, and grief. But it is also a story of resilience, courage, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. The families of Shipman's victims, through their strength and determination, ensured that their loved ones would not be forgotten and that their deaths would not be in vain. It's been a big one today. We've delved into the dark heart of Harold Shipman's crimes, the systematic failings that allowed him to operate undetected for so long, and the devastating impact of on his victims and their families. It's a heavy story, one that's really quite hard to shake off. Honestly, this case has left me feeling a mix of emotions. Anger at the injustice and how he got away with it for so long. Sadness for the victims and their families. A really deep sense of uneasiness for the fact he was a doctor. They are the people you put your trust into to look after you. It's so hard for me to understand. I don't think I ever could. But this story isn't just about darkness and despair. It is also a story of resilience, courage, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. The families of the victims refused to let their loved ones be forgotten. They fought tirelessly for the truth, and their persistence ultimately led to Shipman's downfall and the exposure of the systematic failings that enabled his crimes. So what can we learn from this horrific chapter in history? To me, I think it's a reminder that we need to remain vigilant, to trust our instincts, and to never be afraid to speak up when something doesn't feel right. It's also a call to action, a reminder that we need to hold those in power accountable and demand better protections for the most vulnerable in our society. The Shipman case is a stark reminder of the importance of whistleblowing and the need for greater transparency and accountability in the healthcare system. It also highlights the importance of advocating for the vulnerable and ensuring that their voices are heard. Also, I want to say, I know these stories can be a lot to handle sometimes. They can bring up some pretty heavy stuff, and that's okay. It's okay not to be okay. There have been times in my own life where all I can do is get out of bed, curl up in my favourite blanket, binge anything that's true crime related, and just try to escape from what's ever going on in my head. If you're feeling overwhelmed or triggered by this episode or anything else in your life, please know that you're not alone. It's okay to take a break, to seek help, and to prioritise your mental health. For my Australian listeners, you can always call Lifeline Australia at 13 11 14 or text them even at 0477 13 11 14. They offer confidential crisis support and are available 24/7. For my international listeners, please reach out to the Befrienders Worldwide website at www.befrienders.org to find a crisis hotline in your country. Remember, help is always available, guys, and you're not alone. You've got me and your culty crime crew behind you every step of the way. Now, before I wrap up this wild ride we've been on tonight, I want to hear from you guys, my culty crime crew. Have you got a creepy cult or a chilling crime story that's been keeping you up at night? Slide over into my DMs on Instagram at cozy.cults.crimes, or you can shoot me an email at cozy.cults.crimes@gmail.com, and that's cozy with a Z, guys. Your suggestions might just spark the next episode, and who knows, we might even uncover some dark secrets together. Oh, and hey, if you guys are listening on the day this drops, which is a Thursday, head over to my Instagram and let me know what part of the Shipman story stuck with you most. I'll be shouting out some of my favourite comments in the next episode. And with that, my culty crime crew, thank you for tuning in again this week. I'm Bubbles, and I can't wait to welcome you back next time for another journey into the shadowy, yet strangely comforting world of cozy cults and crimes. I'll see you next time. Bye!